In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. God is one. Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning to Christina, and quite early for you. I see you're saying it's only 4 hours behind. It's 10, 9, 8, 6. 6 rather than 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, and happy Tuesday, Anton. It's wet and murky here, although actually the sun keeps on trying to come out in the last minute or two. So it must be the effect of people like Joanne from a nice sunny country. Oh, look at this. I'm really bright. Everybody will think that I'm transfiguring if I'm not careful. Good morning, Beverly. Yes. Your clock's turned back on Sunday. Just said it's wet and murky, and now it's looking sunny. The sun is found faking it. Joan, making coffee and trying your luck at making gluten-free buckwheat and Kia bread. Aha. Well, I had a look at your cakes this morning on Instagram, and they were just beautiful, stunning. Some two nice ones you did. You can hear thunder, lightning, and a storm is expected this afternoon. Ooh. I quite like I quite often go to Lebanon at this time of the year because it's neither too hot nor too cold. And it's good to sit on a balcony at Balamand and watch the clouds rolling in from the sea and crash, bang, wallop. They're amazing. Good morning, Christos. God bless you. Right, today, just thank you for all those people who prayed for my friend yesterday at her funeral. Her name was Kirsty. It was a Church of England funeral. They used to have a sort of liturgy that they did, but I think they've given up on that. They have a sort of hodgepodge of hymns and ditties and poems and things. But this was really very beautiful. It was a hodgepodge of poems and ditties and about 10 lots of people giving one eulogy after another, all of which were very accurate and very much talked about the person I knew. Lovely, and her husband and two very handsome sons were there, keeping things together somehow within themselves. It must be a terrific loss for them. Anyway, the church was absolutely packed. There must have been around about 100 to 150 people standing at the back of the church and around the sides, let alone sitting in the congregation, and even right the way up into the altar area. This Anglican church had congregants within it. They filled every available space, which gives you an idea of the person she was, and I guess still is. It reminded me, looking around very frequently and very sadly, you often get a situation where somebody has lived their life and 3 or 4 people turn up. Sometimes I've been at several funerals in my time when I'm the only person there, and the undertaker just said to me, right, well, quick, in and out then, Father, and off we go. So no, we have to pray for this person, especially carefully. And there we go. Ian says, All Saints' Day in Western churches. I don't normally like Thought for the Day. Today, the Thought for Today, if you have access to iPlayer, was by the Reverend Lucy Winkett, I think of St. James's Church, Piccadilly. And it was beautiful, really stunningly beautiful. I rarely write to anybody on the radio, but I might well write to her and just say how very moving I found what she said. It was wonderful. Buongiorno, Ahmed. I don't know if you're suddenly breaking into Italian, but there we go. Right, where are we? All sorts of interesting things going on. Now, We're going to crack chapter 14 on the head today, and God willing, we'll move on to chapter 15 tomorrow, which is good because this little bit is a bit depressing, but tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, we'll be looking at some parables that are very hopeful and inspiring. And these ones here contain within them quite a lot of warning. So Luke has put them together deliberately so we don't get too depressed, to remind ourselves that there are nicer things to come and so on. So let's read what it is we're going to do today. So it's Luke chapter 14, verses 28 to 35. God bless you, Suzanne. You're in my prayers already, actually. Certainly will pray for you, and everybody else pray as well. You can delete this now if you wish to, or 10 minutes from now if you want other people to see it. Now then, verses 28 onwards. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, he has enough to finish it, lest, after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all those who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Or what king, going to make war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavor, how can it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land, nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay. Right. Alan or Father Nectarius might well be watching this anyway, Suzanne, so he'll remember to pray for you. But anyway, I'll make sure that he does. Okay, right, now then. So let's have a look at these. There are three parables here, obviously, and they are related, but in different ways. You've got a positive one, you've got a negative one, and you've got a neutral one as well. So the first one, about building a tower. The second one, about a sort of failed ruler, or somebody or other needs to think very carefully about what he's going to do. And the third one is about salt that is spoiled, and how we cope with that. Natalia, God bless you. Anyway, here we go. So verses 28 to 30, we reread that one. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest, after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." I'm reminded, probably Joan knows this place, of a place not far away from Balaman, where there is the concrete structure of an absolutely enormous Orthodox church. It is absolutely huge, enormous. And it's been like that, an unfinished structure with bits of wire sticking out of it here and there for years and years and years. I think probably for nearly 25 years I've been driving past this place on the way from Balaman to somewhere else. I think it's in Dede. Anyway, and every time I go past, I always think of this particular parable. Probably they are saving up money bit by bit. When and if it ever gets finished, it will be a magnificent building. But they are, shall we say, some way off. Now, This parable is somewhat similar to the sower and the field. In this case, it's a warning to make sure that you can carry through your commitment to Christ. The importance of really realizing the cost of discipleship so you take it on board in full. I'm going to come back onto this in a moment, because that sounds as if you should either do it or not do it at all. Okay? And that is a really important thing. So keep that in your mind. Whether or not you're realizing the full cost of discipleship. You'll remember that yesterday we read about the Lord saying we need to take up our cross and follow him. And we need to have that idea in our mind. Am I able to pick up my cross, follow Christ all the way to Calvary, and through Calvary into resurrection? Well, it's a very big demand that the Lord makes. And we should we need to keep that in mind. So you don't start off all enthusiastic and then make a fool of ourselves from the Lord when we just simply decide, okay, I'm going to stay in bed today. Tricky. The second one is in some ways the other way round. Well, what king going to make war against another king does not sit down first, consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a long way off, a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Now, this is an interesting thing here. The fathers can't decide who the king is and who the other king is. And the one king they decide must be you yourself, and the other one, God, in which case you need to make peace with God before he comes close up to you and vanquishes you anyway. Okay, that's the one interpretation of this. The other interpretation is that you are the king, and the other king is Satan. And here the Lord is condemning you for making peace with Satan. Now, I think we can probably take on board both of these as a legitimate interpretation of this parable. The fathers go both ways, so you pay your money and you take your pick. So let's take the first one. You cannot fight against God. God will actually come towards you, so you might as well take up your cross and follow Christ, because the day will come when you'll be vanquished anyway. And so go to meet it now. Okay, make peace. Send your delegation, say, I am yours, come and inhabit my kingdom. And that is one good way of looking at that, one way the fathers actually choose to look at it. The other way, of course, is almost exactly the opposite. And that is, if you are the king and Satan is the one with the army, then the Lord is condemning the person who goes to make any sort of peace with that king. Even then it is well known that you needed 3 times the number of attackers to conquer a defending position. Saying now, even the army now will say that if you need to go against 10,000 people who are defending an area, you need 30,000 troops, which is why it is that the Russians are finding it a little bit tricky at the moment in Ukraine. So you have to really overwhelm, if you're going to do something like that. So in the second case, if the second king is Satan, then the Lord is condemning you for being faint-hearted here. And the fathers actually use that as well. So let's have a bit about a thought about both of these two things. It is definitely tricky to try and come to some sort of understanding of both of these in an easy way. They're not easy to cope with. Now, St. Anthony, so how can we cope with them? St. Anthony of the Desert offers a way through. One of them is, he says that the demons, and as you know from the life of St. Anthony, that he says the demons trick us into taking on things which are too great for us, and when we fail, they lead us into despair. And that is important. We must look very carefully, like that second king, and like the first person building the watchtower, and see what we are actually capable of what we are capable. My apologies. And then work according to that. Okay? So rather like a tailor looking at some material, you cannot make an enormous set of vestments out of enough to make an epitryhelion. So instead you make the epitryhelion. And you do it in other words, you see what sort of person you are, and you make the absolute best of the sort of person you really are, rather than one you'd like to pretend to be. Okay? So that's the one thing. So you do what you can, not what you cannot. And that, I think, is, like unto the first, really important. So you do what you can. Lots of people say to me that they are planning to read the scriptures, they're going to read it all in one sitting, and they'll stay up day and night until it's all done. Well, you can't do that. It's not like a novel that you read from end to end. You do what you can. You actively say to yourself, I'm capable of X, Y, or Z, and you then crack on and do that and do it really well. Okay? I can't remember the name of him now. Was it David Haines, who was a member of Parliament in England? I think it's David Haines, who I think is either an Australian or a New Zealander. And he said to somebody that he was an all or nothing sort of person. And I think it might have been Tony Blair said to him, it is better to be an all or something sort of person. So you might not be able to manage everything, but you can manage something. I think that was David Haines. Okay, so again, do what you can, not what you can't, and don't fly into a sort of despair because you cannot today become a saint. But today you can manage to pray. Today you might not be able to manage to pray. Today you can manage to make the sign of the cross. Today you might not be able to make the sign of the cross, but today you can desire to be the sort of person who could make the sign of the cross. Okay? So, bit by bit. Now, all or something, you then have to work out what. There's a however here. The Lord carries on. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. We must make sure that all earthly attachments take second place. They all do. They all take second place. I'm aware that there are messages appearing and disappearing here. Suzanne, I haven't read all of them because I'm doing something else, but you're in my prayers at the moment. Maybe you can send a message to me separately. Okay? So forsake all. Everything else must come second to the Lord. Carrying on reading. verse 34. The Lord says, salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavour, how can it be seasoned? It's neither fit for the land, nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Okay. Now this again is a parable that the fathers find very difficult to decide exactly what the interpretation should be. In some ways it's quite clear. We have to remain salty for God. If we're not salty for God, then we're of no use to him, and we are then utterly meaningless. Okay? I'm going to put that in. Okay? You have to remain utterly salty for God. If you're not salty for God, you're no longer there. Now, salt is good, says the Lord, but if it's lost its flavour, how can it be seasoned? Neither fit for the land, nor the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, it is suggested that the inside of a baker's oven back then was lined with blocks of salt, of rock salt, and these then added flavour and so on to whatever it is you're cooking within the oven. But after a while, the heat and the dough and everything else took away some of the flavour of this, and at that point, you then threw it out. Okay, it went down onto, you just flung it down onto the roadway. It was of no further use, and more rock salt was then brought in. That's one thing that people say about it. Whether or not that is true, and if that was in the Lord's mind, I don't know. But there's another saying from one of the rabbis who was alive round about the time that St. Luke is speaking. Okay? So here we're dealing with Luke. Luke is actually, at the time of Luke, this man was around, a Jewish rabbi. And it appears in the Talmud. So around about AD 90, he wrote this. And he says, somebody said to him, Rabbi, when can salt, which has lost its flavour, how can it be salty again? And the rabbi, whose name was Rabbi Joshua ben Chananja, said, you can salt this sort of salt by salting it with the afterbirth of a mule. And the questioner says, well, how can that be? Because the mule cannot bear young. Okay? In other words, and then the rabbi said to him, yes, and can salt lose its flavour? Now that then gives another little look at this particular parable, which is also picked up by various scholars and interpreters of this particular parable. That is, that genuine salt cannot lose its flavour. Okay? So to be genuinely a disciple of Christ means that you'll always be salty. And it's only fake salt that actually will lose its flavour. Which reminds me of Tony at the moment, because he's very keen on a sort of pink salt that he insists that we buy from B&M or somewhere. I think it comes from the Himalayas, or as I sort of call it, the Himalayas. So a genuine disciple cannot be anything else but a genuine disciple. Now, the Lord then finishes us off with a solemn warning. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the Lord uses this when he's saying, you better listen up, folks, because what I'm saying to you is of importance to you eternally. So Don't be like the man who built a tower. Do be like the king who sat down and reckoned whether or not he could overcome the other army. Okay? Don't be like the salt that has lost its flavor. And you might then say to yourself, so is everything hopeless because I'm not a saint? I'm unlikely to be that sort of person. And the answer is no. Don't lose all hope, because St. Luke then puts in 3 more parables, which we'll begin looking at tomorrow when we're looking at chapter 15. And you can see them there here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see anything there at all. The first, chapter 15, has the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. So even though you might seem to feel like that you are utterly the lost daughter, the lost son of God, the Lord will actually take out his broom and look for you. He'll go all over the hillsides looking for you, leaving everybody else behind. And thirdly, he'll sit on top of his tower with a poor old fatted calf sitting in its stall, waiting and waiting and watching to see the tiniest movement of you in repentance. Okay, so although today's gospel reading could be pretty dismal, it's immediately followed by ones that are full of hope. Right, now then, let us have a look, see what people are saying. Okay, first of all, Suzanne, you'll be in our prayers. If you wish to, write to me. I'll put my email there. If you wish to, we can go onto Skype or something like that, and I'll be more than happy to spend time with you that way. If you cannot do that, then it's really important that you find some other source of support. Okay, I am thousands of miles away. It's pretty important to find somebodies who are pretty close to you. So talking to me would be an absolute dire emergency, really, from that point of view. In this country, I would suggest you talk to people like Samaritans, and there are lots of other telephone and video support groups and other things. You find yourself in that sort of situation, you get help. In this country, we can visit our own doctor, and the doctor will organize for different types of counseling. There are, in this country, lots of different sorts of counselors as well. Some of them are fantastically good. There's not a sign of weakness, but a strength if one chooses to do that. Also, get your own priest on board to pray with you, to be with you, to support you. Get support from other people nearby. I read what you said about your parents and others. They will be looking to you for support rather than the other way around by the looks of things. And therefore you need to find others. But it is good, first of all, that you're talking about it. It's very important that you do. It is people who are strong who keep things inside, and then it gets to the point where you burst open. So it's important to make sure that you prick your own bubbles really, and they burst open. You're able to talk to and meet with and discuss things with other people. Okay, really important. And I'm sure everybody watching this and seeing this will join with me praying for you like mad. Okay, so bear that in mind. I know that your mother is in no position at the moment to support you at the moment either, and just had her operation. Okay, so be assured of our love and prayers from that point of view. Now, I'm going to look to see what other people are writing. Beverly, not Beverly, Joanne. You don't know that particular one, but you do know other churches not far from where you are. Yes. It's an easy enough thing to do. And one of the things that always amuses me in certain areas, in Afghanistan, it used to be that almost every house had a plan for being 5 stories, and they stopped building it after only 2. And I've seen buildings going up that have gone up 2/3 the way, or the whole building has been built, but nobody's ever managed to afford to do is it the first or second fix where you put in all the wires and stuff to make it actually inhabitable. Joanne continues to say, what does she say? Has it been disappear here? There we go. Are the spouse and children considered earthly attachments? The Lord does say yesterday, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brother and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Which is saying is that he himself must come first. It's a claim to his own divinity, really. Okay? Tony, good to see you with us again. I think you are in Romania now, aren't you? Anton, why do all cardiologists tell me salt is bad for you? Salt has got, well, to make your electrical connections in your body, you need to have quite a number of what are called electrolytes. Now, salt is made up of sodium and chlorine. Sodium has a positive ion on it, and chlorine is a negative ion. And you know probably that sodium is NaCl2, so sodium chloride. And this sodium chlorine and potassium chloride and various other ones, all of them have these positive ions, which are then used by your nervous system in order to, as it were, make electrical impulses go through your body to make things happen in your body. Now, if these things get out of kilter, your body normally has a regulator within itself that actually makes sure that you don't have too much salt within you. These are called the kidneys. There's a nice positive feedback on here. So if you do have too much salt, you should be able to excrete it. If that goes wrong, you then get too much salt in your body. And one of the effects that it has is by producing too many electrical impulses to your heart, which either speeds it up or makes it beat harder than it really should do. So squeezing the blood through your arteries at a higher pressure than it should do. This then is what is called hypertension, high blood pressure, which can cause your heart to weaken, and can cause you to have a heart attack. So too much salt in the small amounts is a good thing. Too much salt will actually upset your electrolytes and have problems for you. Other things also have similar things in them, like unto them, like bananas have got an inordinate amount of potassium in them. So you shouldn't really eat more than a banana a week, probably 2 maximum. And then you'll get plenty of potassium from that. And if you're cooking, it is a good idea not to add any salt at all to any of your food, because there's almost certainly plenty of it there already in the vegetables and other things you're eating. Right, I can see that Natalia is talking to Suzanne, but actually, as I cannot read what Suzanne has written, I can't comment on any of that. Color salt. There's no such thing as good salt. There's only bad salt and even worse salt. Okay? You are in Romania. Good. God bless you. That's very good news. A shout out for C.S. Lewis and his book, The Four Loves. Christina, it is hopeful to think something can be done, something today, maybe not everything, but something, some goodness, some faith, some love, and love to Suzanne. Okay? I think that's wonderful, yeah. Something is always better than nothing. And if you can do something, even if something is very tiny, and sometimes it's just being nice to somebody else, looking beyond yourself, even if for a very short time, then that can begin to help. Helps you as well as somebody else, actually. Jen says she loves bananas. One a week. Afraid so. Okay, one a week. Otherwise you'll go bananas, or you'll turn into a chimp. You won't turn into a chimp. But actually bananas, and lots of things, everything in moderation is probably good for you. Well, most things in moderation, probably good for you. But too much of a good thing. It was Liberace who said that too much of a good thing was absolute bliss. But then he was probably too much of a good thing himself. Okay. Banana cake. Too many people, too bad things just because they can. And too few do good things just because they can. Sorry, I can't make sense of that. Same like one glass of wine a week nonsense. Anton, my doctor asked me the other day, how much did I drink? I said about 3 sips of wine a week. You're thinking, I don't understand this. So sometimes 6 sips of wine a week. Anyway, there we go. Okay, right, there are people to pray for. We know some of us to pray for. So pray obviously for Suzanne. For support from God, but also for support for other people around her as well. Then I'd also like you to pray for 3 people who've died. Kirsty, I asked you to pray for yesterday, and for her husband, Noel, and her 2 beautiful sons, Gabriel and Reuben. And they beautiful names all have. And then if you could pray for Thekla's godfather, Sergei, for whom we prayed the other day, and who has now died. So pray for Sergei, also pray for Thekla, please. And then for Father Chrysostom, who lived in Athens, who has also died, fairly young, age 52, so a year younger than Kirsty. And for his family, he himself is a monk, but for his family at home, and for his parish, who obviously will also be feeling the effects of his death, which is never easy. Pray for Philip with his stroke, for him to start recovering, and Judy with her stroke, for her recovery. for Senor Esther and his illness, for Suzanne's mother, Lynette, Igor, who's a child in hospital, for Joseph, suffering from Erin's Joseph with the effects of COVID. Also, yesterday I saw a friend of mine, Angela, who's still suffering from COVID, which she had more than, 18 months ago, and now needs quite a lot of support, unfortunately. For Stella's friends, Belen and Anne, for Brenda, who has kidney problems, and for Lewis, who is a friend of friends of mine. He's a young lad, teenager, who is really suffering greatly from mental health problems. So please keep all of these people in your prayers. The effect of our prayers are huge, you know. When you pray, especially ask the intercession of the saints at the same time, you join the entirety of the church and the angels and saints and everybody turning towards God, who has an infinite amount of time to listen to the slightest prayer. So make use of it and keep on praying for each other and so on, and like this, okay? Choc chips. God bless you. God bless you, Christos. Right. Okay. Well, God willing, assuming I'm spared and all other things are equal, we will continue with this tomorrow. I'm going to go off in a few minutes, go and see Ellie, and then I've got young Ben coming to spend part of the day with me, and I think I'm going to go off and bless his room at university. So I shall probably cut a rather strange figure in the university. There will be any number of raised eyebrows. Okay, God bless you all.